Welcome back to the Rebuilt Parish Podcast. On today's episode, we've got Natalie Martz, who is an owner and operator of a Chick-fil-A. And let me tell you what, you've got to tune in and listen to her great stories and listen to how she talks about leadership and how that translates into parish leadership. She's got some incredible stories, including one about the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, so you're going to want to listen in. We'll see you inside the episode. Well, hey there, Natalie. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
And Tom, great to have you back on the podcast as always.
Yeah, it's good. It's great to be on and great to have the conversation with Natalie. I think it's going to be a real treat for people to hear from her today.
Well, I'm personally very excited about this because I just love Chick-fil-A. So I cannot wait to just hear all of the goodness that you're going to share today, Natalie.
Yes. Lots of little nuggets to share, I think.
Literally nuggets. I love it. Oh my gosh. All right. So we've teased it out a little bit, but Natalie, share with us a little bit about you, your faith journey, and how you got to become a Chick-fil-A owner-operator.
Sure. So I'm born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. I have a husband, Mike, of almost 23 years coming up next month. We have a 10-year-old daughter, Liliana. We both grew up in the Catholic Church. My home parish was St. Michael's in Fells Point. Pretty much grew up there, and then eventually they closed. And we kind of started church shopping a little bit. There was a time period in our early marriage where we actually lived in Atlanta, Georgia. And during that time, we found a Catholic parish that was a little bit on the modern side, a little progressive. So we really enjoyed that environment. So we come home and, we're kind of looking around trying to find a new church home. And I remember it was the early days of Chick-fil-A, really busy in the restaurant, really learning the restaurant. And it was Ash Wednesday and I needed to get my ashes. So I really just Googled it and Nativity came up and I said to my husband, hey, I'm going to run up here real quick, jump in for a quick service, get ashes and I'll be back. And I remember going that day and just thinking, I got to get him here. Like, this is really something different. And it was even a lot bigger and just a little bit more modern than even what we had found in Atlanta. So that's kind of how we came to Nativity and we never left since then. So it's been something. As far as Chick-fil-A goes, my journey in business actually started, and I'll back up, I guess, go a little bit earlier, but I was a 19-year-old college student and I grew up doing martial arts, Taekwondo. I started when I was 5 and I got my black belt when I was 9 and I started teaching and at 14 was my first job. And the owner of the Taekwondo studio, he came to me and he said, I really, I want to get into some different business interests. Would you be interested in buying this business from me? And I said, Mr. Kim, I don't have any money. So
at
he
14?
Said, at 19.
Oh, 19. Okay.
Yep. And he said, well, ask your parents. So I asked my parents and they said, hey, we don't really have any money, but ask your grandmother. So I go to my grandmother and she lends me $10,000 on her credit card and lets me go into business. So My mom worked for me. My dad would come when he got off of work. My sister had just graduated college and came and worked for me. And we had a martial arts studio, but we also did after school, summer camp, before care, after care. So it was kind of a big operation for me and they helped out a lot and I was able to pay my grandmother back in 1 year and I still can't believe she lent me $10,000 on her credit card at 19. But that's how I kind of ended up in business. And then fast forward a little bit, my husband and I moved to Atlanta. I had a tutoring company. We did SAT prep, reading, writing, math for K through 12. It was during that time that I was kind of introduced to Chick-fil-A through a book, through Truett Cathy's book, It's Better to Build Boys Than Men. And was just really inspired and, all what he was doing in the community through a chicken sandwich. So I said to my husband, I said, if we were ever different place, different time, sold this business, I would really look to Chick-fil-A as kind of our next business opportunity. So fast forward, we sold that business, moved back to Baltimore to be close to our family. And, I was kind of looking for that next thing. And I went online and, saw that they were looking for new owners in the Maryland area. And I applied, never worked in the restaurant, didn't know anyone in the restaurant industry or business, but was just really inspired. And I thought, if this is where God wants me to be, this is where I'm going to be. And it took 2 years, lots of interviews, back and forth to Atlanta. That's where the home office is in Atlanta. And finally, I was selected to become an owner. And, I was very blessed to be able to stay in Towson. Most of the time when you go to Chick-fil-A, if you get the opportunity, you might have to move out of your hometown. And I was really blessed to be able to stay here locally in Towson, kind of close to where I grew up. So that's kind of the story, the short story. We owned one in Towson Town Center Mall for about 10 years. And then we just opened a new location in 2024, a freestanding restaurant with a drive-through right in the heart of Towson. So just really excited to be here and love what I get to do every day.
So a fun fact, and then I want to ask you a question, Natalie. 5 of my kids, right? 5, yeah. Yes. The first 5 have all worked for Natalie. The first 3 at the one in Towson at the mall. And now my son, Keifa, and my daughter, Elsa, work for Natalie. So at their, so it's just a little fun fact. Let me ask you a question about you, Natalie, about your temperament or kind of who you are. All right. So to own a business, a lot of people think of themselves as going to work for someone else. Like that's their kind of career. But you think, I would say, more entrepreneurial. I'm going to own a business. Where do you think that came from? Or just this opportunity came up and it started you on that path? I don't know.
I think a lot of it had to do with my early years in Taekwondo, and Mr. Kim just really took me under his wing. I mean, he taught me business, and he said to me I remember where I was sitting, and he said, I'm going to teach you how to run this place one day. And I was probably 10 years old. And so I think just his belief in me and him pouring into me, and that's probably uncommon. He's this traditional Korean guy, came here from South Korea with not a dollar in his pocket and kind of built this empire of martial arts schools, really, really successful. And I became really close to his family, and he just really poured into me. And then I have my parents who were always super encouraging, like, go after it. You can do anything you want. My dad owned a business at a short period of time when I was little. I remember trying to help him with that. My mom sold Avon to put my sister through Catholic school, and so they were just always gritty. And I would just always, when my mom was selling Avon, she would say, okay, let's go deliver these flyers door to door, and I would jump out the car and run and put the bags on the doors. And so I don't know, it was just always, kind of two sides of my life at Taekwondo. And then with my parents, just really kind of ingrained in me that I could do it, and I could do anything. So,
okay. Because I do think for parish leaders, this is a little bit the reason I'm asking, and I don't know what the transferable principle is, but I think for parish leaders and pastors, we have to start to think a little more entrepreneurial, like this is a small business, and some people might not like that idea, but the reason we want you on and is because you do bring that attitude and that idea of like, this is it is a business, it is an organization, it does need money and staff and all these things that you need to do at Chick-fil-A. So anyway, but people pouring into you was a huge point of encouraging you and kind of in the water, or not in the water, but influences, I guess it sounds like.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, without a doubt, they really did. I think believed in me when I didn't really even believe in myself or knew that I could do that. I'm a 19-year-old kid, and even my grandmother, giving me her credit card and saying, "Here you go," And reflecting on that now, it's such a huge moment in my life. I didn't even realize it then. It's just kind of like, just that support has always been there for me, which is definitely amazing.
I'm going to give it back to Melissa in a second, but I think that as I reflect on my story, and not at 19, but early 20s, when I came to work at Nativity, Father White's belief in me, and he also surrounded me with a couple other I would say adults. I was an adult, but you feel like a kid at 20. For me, 23 when I came, but other people further along in life who were just believed in me, poured into me. So I think for parishes or parish leaders, you're pouring into younger people and saying you believe in them and communicating that's a huge deal. I'm preaching to myself a little bit here too.
And I think that's what really drew me to Chick-fil-A to begin with. Yes, inspired by what Truett was doing in the community, but being able to be someone's, first leader, first boss, we've created this environment where they're walking into at 14, 15, 16, and just being that for them, I think is what really drew me to Chick-fil-A to begin with, is just the developing of young people and kind of being that example for them. All stems from kind of how I grew up and believing that young people can do so much. I think sometimes we limit what we think teenagers can actually do. And I think that you need to take that lid off and really empower them. And I think they can do so much.
Natalie, that's huge. And that leads me into what I want to ask you about. So you're talking about how you were shaped by these early influences in your life. So now, how are you taking that and then Chick-fil-A's culture and values and applying that into the people that are working on your team? And how are you kind of letting that personal faith help you in how you lead your team and run the business?
Yeah. We kind of, touched on it just a few minutes ago. At Chick-fil-A, we really talk about valuing relationships and results. And it's a balance, right? Because if we're really focused on results, then we're not really focused on the relationships and the care of people. And you can think of some brands maybe that do that, are all about results, but then are not really doing well with relationships on the relationship side. And then maybe you have the opposite. You have a leader who's so relationship driven and relationship minded that maybe the results suffer from that. So we really try our best to kind of create an environment where we're focused on both. And that includes, having hard conversations and leading with integrity and making really hard decisions at times, extending grace, when necessary. But we really do try to lead that way. People over profit, the team member and the guest are worth so much more than just their performance or just that transaction at the counter. So really just trying to kind of get that to my team and help them to understand it. And then I think,
Natalie, can I stop you there? Sorry, This is what I do. Because you just said a lot there, though.
Okay.
And so I don't know if you can remember that thought, but first of all, I think the balance is huge for parish leaders, relationships and results. Because I think probably in the parish and church world, we just go to relationships, right? We go to, hey, we got to love people. Well, that person's not doing their job and they don't show up and everybody's leaving the church. Goes, yeah, but I don't want to hurt their feelings. Like, well, you're hurting the feelings of everybody, right?
That's right.
But so you had a couple of things there, relationships and results, kind of doing both. You said tough conversations, right?
Yeah.
So that means having tough conversations when someone's not living up or they're not reflecting the values. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to, in order to get the results that we want for the business, the second part of that is really about stewardship, right? And I have a responsibility and duty to provide a return to the Cathy family, to Chick-fil-A. So part of that is I have to really value those results too. But how do I do both? So it's through those hard conversations. It's through high standards and accountability, extending grace, and I always tell my team, when you have to have those hard conversations, it shouldn't be a surprise to that person. If we're doing our job, it's not a surprise, right? Clear is kind. So as long as we're kind of doing what we're supposed to be doing, it's when we have to sit down, I can sleep at night, right? And if I have trouble going to sleep because of these hard conversations, then I got a problem with that. So that's kind of the way that I look at it. Is I have to lead with kindness. Is
there anything Chick-fil-A did to you as an owner operator? Any way they helped to build that into you?
For sure. Absolutely. I think just the environment in general, kind of leads us down this path. I would say I probably came with a little bit of it, but really just through time at, conferences and meetings and just getting to know the culture and the environment there, it definitely helps it come out a lot more. There are books that Chick-fil-A has written, some leadership development books. When we talk about valuing relationships and results, that's one of the values of the serve model that Chick-fil-A has. So that's something that they definitely do talk to us a lot about, but then we're left to kind of go implement it on our own.
What happens when parish leaders stop standing still and start taking bold steps forward? Well, come find out and join us at the 2027 Rebuilt Conference. Pastors, parish staff, and ministry leaders from around the country will be gathering and joining together at Church of the Nativity in Timonium, Maryland, to experience what it looks like when a parish is fully alive and aligned on mission. The Rebuilt Conference is for parish leaders by parish leaders. By joining, you'll hear practical strategies and real stories of parish renewal. You'll get to connect with leaders facing the same challenges you are and leave feeling encouraged, equipped, and ready to move forward with clarity and confidence. So join us May 3rd and 4th, 2027 for 2 full days focused on parish renewal, discipleship, and building a thriving Catholic parish. Join the waitlist today at rebuiltconference.com to receive conference updates, speaker announcements, and early bird pricing before tickets open publicly. We can't wait to see you in May.
Okay.
Gosh, I love that. I just have to say, like, coming from corporate America before church world, Natalie, like, I think about how Chick-fil-A has done so many things so well, and having faith at the forefront and not being ashamed to say, nope, we're closed on Sundays. We respect the Sabbath. Yeah. Making this people first so important, but yet having those tough conversations. This just, I don't know, Tom, I'm kind of wishing my corporate experience were a little bit different, that I had some of this, because what a blessing. And so much of this transfers into church world and what a lot of these pastors are going through, because a lot of them aren't being taught how to have some of these tough conversations. And a lot of them aren't being taught, like, okay, well, if somebody on your team is dragging the rest of the parish down, then we have to address it. Natalie, I'm so excited for you, because this just seems like the best of both worlds combined.
Yeah, it really, really is. I mean, like I said, I feel like I have the best job in the world. It does not feel like work. I know sometimes people say that, but I really, really mean it. Like, every day is different. I love the fast pace of the organization. Chick-fil-A offers us so much opportunity to go and do, like, even outside of the four walls of the restaurant. So it really is something special.
I love that.
I cut you off there, Natalie, and maybe you don't have that thought anymore. And I was thinking, but anyway, you were talking about relationships and results, and you started to go down, and I stopped you. So is there anything else you wanted to say about that, or?
I think the other thing that comes to mind when I think about my faith and business kind of intersecting is really around stewardship. And it's really just knowing that God owns it all, I don't really own it. So I think we have a duty to kind of have that responsibility of viewing things that way, and in the way that we work. All of those things I mentioned earlier, I think, are really important, but it really all goes back to stewardship and knowing, part of our corporate purpose is to glorify God by being a faithful steward with all that's entrusted to us, right? So just really recognizing that, and every day going in saying, okay, I'm just here to manage this. It's really not mine, but I should put my best effort forward.
Where for you? I'll ask it open ended, and I'll ask, where did that come from? I mean, it sounds like some of it came from Chick-fil-A. Is that the principal place it came from, or where else is that?
Yes. So back I think it was around 1980, 1981, Chick-fil-A had kind of come into a really difficult time, and the executive committee kind of locked themselves in a room for a day to kind of figure out what to do with this business. And they end up coming out with a corporate purpose. And that was not the reason that they went into this meeting. And they came out with it, to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that's entrusted to us and have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. They came out with that. And that's kind of been just our, what we focus on and what we go after. And that's the corporate purpose is, in my restaurant, that does definitely have a place, but part of our vision is also to make people, guests and team members alike, feel valued and cared for. So we kind of just take that larger corporate purpose, and then every owner operator may kind of lead it differently.
And the reason I partly ask is I think for every parish leader here, that's part of our role, is to help people see themselves as stewards, not owners of all we've been given.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge a little bit for us is, hopefully, I was hoping you were going to say Nativity helped me with that, but that's all right. But I think, things need to be reinforced. So hopefully that's like a message we get out there. Maybe we got to work on it a little bit more. But most probably people in the world are not hearing that. Most people are not working for Chick-fil-A. Most, as Melissa's saying, most corporate places are not saying you're a steward of what God's given you.
100%.
So I just think that, part of the lesson is we just have to keep saying it and kind of communicating that, and hopefully maybe that message is getting out other places in the world for people. So
yeah. And it's honestly, it's something that I'm still working on, even in my personal life, looking at, what comes through the business and, how do I steward that? And how are we to be good stewards of what God's entrusted to us personally as well? So it all trickles down.
Does that help you? How do you do that with the pressures if things are not going well? You're such a competent leader, so it all happens. We all go through struggles where things aren't going well.
Yeah.
How does that impact you to be like, all right, this isn't mine, this is God's? Does that help you when there are challenges or the things
I would love to say yes all the time. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think just probably leading on a lot of prayer, during those times. And, there are definitely times when it's not going right, and we just work really hard to kind of get things back on track. And, I guess it's just an overall mindset that kind of is always just hanging there. And I would say, that my top leaders, are very aware and they understand. We talk about stewardship a lot. And honestly, we're even talking about stewardship at that team member level. Like, how do we get our team? These are young college kids, high school students coming in and I'm talking about little things, like just the way we care for equipment, the way that we care for things in the restaurant, the way that we care for our employee bathroom, how can we be good stewards of that? So we're really trying to kind of infuse some of that even at those levels, which is a little bit of a harder concept for them to grasp. But
right.
we're talking about it.
I think those leaders, the flip, and then I'm going to give it back to Melissa. She's
no, I have an idea. So go ahead, Tom, and then I'll share my idea.
I think then as leaders, when at the parish or Rebuilt, we're going through struggles too. And there's, challenges of either funding or there's, it's getting attacked or whatever it is. The stewardship is, hey, God, this is not mine.
Yeah.
Like, I think as leaders, I mean, we are stewards. I'm doing the best I can, but hey, God, this is your ministry. If you want it to do well, again, this is a healthier attitude I don't always have either. So you're saying you struggle with it. Every pastor struggles with it. Every leader struggles with it. And we're paid church people. Like, we're supposed to be preaching this. Hey, it's not yours, it's God's. Let it go. But I think that the positive can be like, this is not. I believe we're in partnership with God, so I think there's that. But like, hey, God, you want this to keep going? I'm going to work hard, but God, I'm trusting you to show up, and this is really yours. Or if it's not, then maybe you don't want it, and help me to learn that. I usually don't believe that. I don't think, but God, this is yours, so you got to show up, God, and I'm trusting you to show up, kind of thing. So anyway,
it's definitely hard in the moment. It's hard in the moment.
Yeah.
It is. Well, Tom, I'm thinking you got to have Natalie make one of the stewardship videos if you haven't already, because goodness, does she just have a beautiful take on it that maybe others haven't thought of it that way?
We have, I believe.
Have you?
In some way. I don't know for Rebuilt, but definitely we've done something for Nativity.
For Nativity, yeah.
I love that. Well, maybe we'll have to link to
that. We should get linked in the show. So
I think we should really, really share that because, one of the things I love about what we talk about for Stewardship Weekend is sharing stewardship stories from parishioners. And I think that, Natalie, the way that you just shared that is so powerful, not just how you're stewarding everything, but how you're teaching stewardship too. I mean, when I think about, I've got a kid who's turning 14 and is going to be starting his first job this summer. And I think about, oh gosh, will he know to be a good steward of equipment and things like that, just like you're sharing about. And goodness, what a blessing for your team to have a leader like you who's teaching them these life skills like stewardship right off the bat. That's so good.
Yeah, I'll add one quick thing to when that struggle comes in. And I think, I give a lot of credit to Mike, my husband, because he's kind of a behind the scenes guy. He does not like to be out front. He's very quiet. But he really challenges my thinking sometimes. So when I'm kind of like driven and ambitious and, want to get things going back to maybe where they were and we've fallen off track, he really does kind of help me to say, do you really think that's how God would want you, to handle that? And he'll question me. And a lot of times it does help me kind of redirect or realign. So having somebody, I think, whether it's a spouse or just somebody else, whether that's another leader in the church to really lean on and help during those really tough decisions, I think is really key. Because I really surely couldn't do it without some of that guidance.
I was going to ask you about that now a little bit. I mean, and about, because you guys are great partners, it appears. And
it has its days.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. And I'm just thinking a little bit the parish leaders, probably most are not working with their spouse. A pastor certainly is not working with his spouse like you are, but more that, how you two do work together. Because I think everybody needs that second chair person or that other leader, and then identifying the gifts we have, like. You are the out front person, as you said, but then Mike is a great behind the scenes, as you said. So
yeah.
I don't know. How did you guys realize you could do that together? Is there any insight you can help?
I think a lot of trial and error.
What's that?
A lot of trial and error, early on, it definitely had its challenges. But I would say even early on, we just kind of knew we had different gifts and kind of went two separate ways in the business. And we kind of came up, okay, worst case scenario plan, if all else fails, you're going to be this and I'm going to be that. And we kind of just separated out that I'm people, he's operations, I'm sales and brand growth. He kind of gets his hands dirty and will help with the team when necessary. So we kind of just went our separate ways. And I think I learned over time to kind of move out of his way a little bit. And he's probably learned to move out of mine. So we don't clash a lot. There are definitely times that we have. So I think it just took a little bit of time to kind of let those gifts shine and really trust in who God made him and to be and what part of this business that, he really impacts a lot. And for me to recognize that and step out the way. As far as the marriage goes, I always say, like, he leads at home, I lead at work, and making sure that I give him the space to do that at home, I think is really important. It's important for him, especially, I think, to have that. So, I don't know, God worked it all out, I guess.
When you talk about how the different giftings, I think that translates beautifully into parish life as well, in all aspects of business, but especially in parish life, when you talk about how what your giftings are, and he lets you work within those giftings without getting in your way. And you see what his giftings are, and you let him lead in those giftings without getting in his way. I think that translation is great, because in parish life, we don't always think about our giftings and who's gifted at what. But one of the things that we like to talk about is that recognizing each other's giftings and also seeing where we're lacking, right? Like where I might have a working frustration that somebody else might excel in. So we need to maybe bring someone new into the team. And I think that the way you're doing that is just such a great example for our parish leaders.
Thank you. Yeah, I can imagine I think it's difficult even in ministry. A lot of your volunteers, you're there working really hard and you want to do well, right? I mean, you're in some ways your reputation's on the line too, right? So you kind of want to take control, but I think we all have to recognize as leaders, there's times to take control, and there's times to kind of like, okay, let somebody else kind of do that and get the credit and shine a little bit. And we have to be confident in being like, hey, that's all for the greater good of our mission and vision of what we're trying to do.
So good. Now, Natalie, you talked about how, during some of those trying times, you've really had to go to prayer. Can you think of maybe an example of a time where you really had to look to your faith to help guide you in maybe a difficult decision or a leadership challenge that you had?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's almost every day sometimes. There's always things that come up. But I think a big example for that is a couple years ago, I wanted to add an additional restaurant to our portfolio. And it didn't work out the way that I had wanted, nor the way that I thought God was leading me. I really thought I was kind of like listening to what he wanted me to the steps in the path that he had laid for me. And so I was kind of mad with him for a little bit. And, it was really challenging, for me professionally and personally, because it kind of bleeds into everyday life. And a friend had said to me, another Chick-fil-A owner had said to me, Natalie, God's either protecting you for something or he's preparing you for something. Mm-hmm. And that line alone, I just realized, what, I'm trying to control it all. I'm trying to step in the way of God's plan. And I had to do a lot of work. My identity was probably caught up a little bit too much in who I was as a Chick-fil-A owner and who I was to Chick-fil-A. So I've had to kind of make some shifts in realizing like that's not all of who I am, and really work on my priorities and my perception of things, and just really kind of let go and let God, as they say, and just let him kind of handle things. And I know that it will be his plan for me in his timing, not mine.
Oh my gosh, Natalie, can we say this again? God is either protecting you from something or preparing you for something.
Yeah, that's it.
Natalie, can we just take this a little bit of sidebar, but I wanted to share, since we're on prayer, can you share your story about this year for the Chick-fil-A Bowl and prayer?
Oh, sure. So I get I get invited to a lot of different things at Chick-fil-A Support Center. And I was asked in late December to give the invocation at the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, which is in Atlanta in January. So I'll back up for a minute. So I'm part of a women's group. It's a group for women business leaders and executives in the Baltimore area. And so I'm in a meeting one day and we're kind of sitting around the table. And we pray a lot. We pray for each other. And it was my turn to pray out loud over the group. And I whispered to my table, I said, I'm not really comfortable praying out loud over this many people, And they're like, oh, Natalie, they poured into me. They spoke into me. They prayed for me. And I did. I prayed over them and it was great. within like a week later, I get an email from our CMO of Chick-fil-A and asking me to pray over 70,000 people at the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And, I was like, oh my gosh, God is a comedian, So I said yes, and I had the opportunity to do that. And, it was just such an amazing, amazing experience to be on that field and kind of looking up and seeing all those people out there and getting the opportunity to do that was something I'll never forget,
Share a little bit about the end when, like right before you...
The Jesus part?
Yeah.
So the other side is my daughter was there with me, which was really something special to have her down the field too. But anyway, so I'm down the field kind of an hour before go time, and I'm a little nervous. And John Bridges, who was our CMO at the time, he's like, hey, come over, I want you to meet somebody. And it was Bruce Neal, who runs a nonprofit organization in Atlanta. And so he prays over me in that moment. And that was great. And at the end, he says to me, Natalie, people in the South really love it when you say in Jesus' name at the end of your prayer. And I said, whoa, Bruce. They asked me not to do that because I'm praying over 70,000 people of, all different religions. They just keep it very broad. I had to get the prayer approved. And John's like, says to me, what are they going to do to you? If you say that. So I was like, okay, a little challenge here. So I said my prayer and invocation, and at the end I added it in, and the crowd went wild. It was so fun. It was quite an experience.
Oh my gosh. Well, Natalie, I think back to what you had just said before, where God's either protecting you or preparing you. And God was preparing you that week before that ask, where you said, I'm kind of uncomfortable praying over all of these people. And then, God's like, how about 70,000 people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's funny when Natalie sent me the email and like invocation, like, big word kind of thing. And I'm like, does that mean she's praying in front of like everybody? Like I was like, she was asking for, because a little bit to say anything about Nativity and anything to put in there. And I'm like, I think I'm reading this right. So then I saw Natalie at church. I'm like, do I understand this right? Like in front of the whole Peach Bowl. So yeah, it was fun.
It was amazing. And, Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback of Indiana, is a Catholic. And I mean, it was just a whole awesome experience from beginning to end. So.
That's incredible. And Tom, we talk football all the time on this podcast, and I get excited just hearing that before a bowl game that there is prayer like that. I had no idea. I love that.
Yeah, it might be one of the only ones that still do it, from my understanding. So, it was not broadcast on ESPN or anything like that, but it still happens. So, very exciting thing.
So good. Well, Natalie, I'd love to talk about leadership a little bit if we could. Yeah. You talk about how you've got some leaders on your team as well. So, and a lot of our parish leaders out there are working on building layers of leadership. Could you just talk a little bit about how you really develop your leaders and how you work on building a healthy leadership culture?
Yeah. So I guess it's a two-piece question. To start, we have about 160 to 170 team members on our team at our Towson location. So lots of people, lots of team members. We have probably about 20 leaders altogether, from shift leaders up to directors of the organization. I spend the majority of my time with our directors, which I have 6 direct reports. So that is, we have our business director who's been with me for 10 plus years, solid, young man, just, he's a godsend. So he's kind of my top leader. And then I have someone in front of house director who focuses on guest experience. We have our kitchen, back of house production, quality director. We have our marketing director. We have a training director. We have an HR and talent director. So that kind of encapsulates the top leadership level. And they're really, what'd you say?
No, I've never heard this. So all at one restaurant. So I think
Tom, this is my team in my big box retail store. I had 200 people for a big box retail store and 6 direct reports. But Natalie, this is huge. You have this huge team, as big as I had in a Target store, in a Chick-fil-A. This is incredible. Okay. I need to hear more about this. Tell us.
So those are my direct reports. They kind of run every area of the business. And then Below that, we have assistant directors and managers who are more focused on a specific area of the business. So whether that's drive-through, that's dining room, catering, we have a lot of moving pieces. So we really have dedicated leadership over each area of the business, which I think is really important. And then underneath our management level, we have our shift leaders. So they're really focused on the day-to-day, not necessarily big picture. We talk about big picture, but they're really coming in, running the shifts, putting people in the right positions, and just making sure that, the customers are being served, quickly and efficiently, and the service is what it should be, right? So there are, frontline kind of leaders, and we have shift leaders. On any one shift, we probably have 40 plus team members altogether, and then we have leaders in each of those areas of the business, whether that's outside in the drive-through, in the kitchen, catering, front of house, back of house. We also have a delivery business, so we have somebody over delivery. And then underneath our shift leaders, we have our certified trainers. So these are usually our younger team members or someone who's interested in moving into a higher level leadership position. And they go through a very specific training development program that's led by one of our directors in the restaurant. And she kind of leads them through not only learning how to make a chicken sandwich or how to serve the guest, but a lot of values and a lot of just leadership training. She spends time with them, mentoring, a lot of one-on-one. So that's kind of the leadership depth of the organization, from top down.
Sometimes all it takes is one moment, one conversation, or one weekend for a parish to begin moving in a new direction. That's why Rebuilt Parish has launched our Rebuilt Speakers Network. Whether it's a parish mission, a diocesan event, or a strategic offsite with your staff, our team helps Catholic leaders step back, focus on what matters most, and leave with a vision for what is possible. And beginning this fall, Tom Corcoran will be traveling to parishes to speak about our latest book, Jesus, the Rich Young Man, and the Meaning of Life. This presentation will help your whole parish grow deeper in their relationship with Jesus in a culture filled with distractions. If you'd like to bring a Rebuilt speaker to your parish or diocese, email me, Colleen@rebuiltparish.com, to learn more and to book your speaker today.
I think it's just important for parish leaders to hear, again, the thoughtfulness of each of that. And that's what we would be encouraging parishes from. There is the pastor, there needs to be a leadership team, kind of like you had, then there's staff, and then we need volunteer leaders. You said it's a complex. Chick-fil-A looks pretty simple on the surface, Natalie, but look at all that. I think that's what Melissa was saying is all that that's supporting that and making that happen. And the same thing, parishes, I think, can look simple on the surface, but we all know there's a lot of complexity behind it. Mm-hmm. And a way to make that easier for us and more effective, efficient is those layers of leaders. So
yeah, it's really, dedicated leadership to each area. There was a time where maybe we weren't as big and, we had, a leader wearing multiple hats. And I think that can work for a time period, but at some point, as you continue to grow, you kind of have to spread out a little bit and give them direct ownership of an area. And really my direct leadership team, they really allow me to kind of be freed up. So, I'm not necessarily in the day-to-day. I like to be, when I'm there, I try to help and I'll jump in. Sometimes probably get in the way more than anything. But they really do allow me to do other things, to kind of focus on growing the business outside the four walls, to serve on boards, to do some things at the support center, to just really lead the business from a different level. That most people think, restaurant owner, they think, day to day, not kind of big picture where because of that leadership team, I'm able to serve.
Natalie, you said something that I really want to draw attention to our pastors and parish leaders here is that before growth, sometimes a leader will have to wear multiple hats. But then once you can fill that and give that person something direct to focus on, that's going to help continue that growth. And I think that's so important for these parish leaders out there, because Tom, I know that you lived that at Nativity, where you would start something and then find someone to replace you and then move on to the next thing as Nativity continued to grow. And this is that same kind of mentality that our parish leaders out there need to take.
Yeah, that's why I said at the beginning, that entrepreneurial kind of idea. And it might be interesting, Natalie, if there's any choke points, I'm not sure that you found or places you plateaued, but yeah, and that's what I would do. Like we didn't have a kids program. So we call it All Stars now. I was the All Star director, and I was
That's
in
right.
there and built it up. And then at a certain point, walked away from it. Small groups. We didn't have a small groups program. Built it up, and then handed it on. I am probably not great in the baton passing. Someone just came. I'm like, all right, it's yours. Like, I probably did not do a great job of training them, and somewhat the program was built up enough that there was something to see. But yeah, did that with small groups. I've done that in a few different areas of the church where build it up and then pass it on to somebody else, or just walked away and the ball was there and somebody picked it up.
Yeah. And sometimes you're passing it to someone better equipped, someone who's really passionate about that area and can really, we kind of move out of their way and kind of just let them go, and I think that's really, where the magic happens, and instead of, hovering over them and making sure it's done the way that you want to being confident enough to just say, okay, I got the right person on board. We've kind of built it to what it is. Now it's ready. I have to, trust that this person can kind of take it to that next level.
With the nursery, the All Stars, I was very happy to hand that over. I was not, that is not my, little kids was certainly not my passion. So I was very happy to hand that over. So, but like you said, some things are harder. Some things are easier. Like, oh my gosh, I'm glad I'm out. Have you hit any, were there any choke points? I'm saying there are places where like you were hitting a lid and you figured that out, Natalie, that would be transferable principle, or maybe if not, we can make the transference.
I would say just quickly, it's just making sure you have the right people in the right seat on the bus, really thinking through. I think we've hit probably some lids when it came to that. They had certain gifts and talents and we weren't utilizing them the right way, and maybe God didn't make them for that specific area. So, but for us, if they are a person of character and they're loyal and they're there and they're dependable, I will find a place for you, and I think that's really important because, if they have the willingness to learn and to grow and their heart's in the right place, I will find them a spot in the business.
That's a great point, because sometimes I think in church world, we throw a lot of different things at people and they're drowning on one of those areas.
Yeah.
Because it's so much. And that it can slip in, well, they're incompetent. Well, they're incompetent in that, or they have too much. Or now that the different, and so let's reposition them, as you kind of said, or a person, now the opposite is someone's lazy or they're not working or they're not the person of character. That person we got to get rid of, right? That's the person we got to say. No,
yeah, we say, is it a willingness issue or is it a capability issue, right? Are they just unwilling to do the job, or are they just not capable right now? Okay, so what can we do to whether that's moving them to a different area or working on them, developing them, helping them grow in that area? Go ahead.
Where do you find your people? Again, that any insight in parish leaders are it's hard. Like, okay, go hire somebody. Okay, who?
Yeah.
Anything? I have to believe it's a somewhat similar Chick-fil-A, but maybe I'm wrong. How do you guys find it?
I think our brand is somewhat sort of at a place that just generally attracts good people, we get a ton of applicants. Right now, I was just talking to our talent director. We're getting about 30 applicants a day right now. So that's a lot to kind of sift through and interview. And we have a pretty strict interview process they're going through. It's not just one interview. There's a phone interview, there's an in-person interview, there's a video portion to it. They're coming in, they're meeting with 2 leaders before they kind of get that stamp. We are, we're looking for 10s. If you're an 8, we're not going to bring you on. We're really looking for the total package team member. And that there's a lot of factors there, but, we also still do recruiting. We have a great, partnership with Towson University. We'll go out to a lot of job fairs. I think the other thing that helps us is our social media. I have somebody who is phenomenal on social media. So a lot of our social media posts are not just about the chicken sandwich or the new, menu item that's coming out. A lot of it is about our culture. And it's a fun place to work, and we care for you and we have all of these different benefits. And so that we try to bring that out in some of our social media so that attracts people to want to come work for us in the community.
Tom, you've raised some 10s. That's pretty exciting. If you've had how many of your kids working there already? And you got to be independent and hired. You got to feel good. I was going to ask,
is that at the lower team level, or that's probably the leadership level? But yeah.
No, listen, it's because we're getting so many applicants. We have to hold a high standard, and we have to, once they get in, we have specific touch points of their journey that we're touching in with them, and somebody sitting with them asking, hey, how's this going? What's working? What's hard for you? And just really trying to make sure that we're caring for them through the process too. Because it's hard. Working at Chick-fil-A is not an easy job either, So we have to make sure that we're continuing that development piece once they're hired.
It has helped Melissa to know Natalie. Like one of my children, I won't name which one, went to an interview not really prepared. And I kind of knew it. Anyway, I won't tell the whole story. But this child went through, and then I texted Natalie, and she's like, "No, if it's let me know. I'll give the person another shot. I'm not going to go any more than that in case that child listens to this podcast, which probably won't. But anyway, that has helped, and so it does come that relationships matter a lot. They do help.
Sure. Yeah. Natalie, something you said though I think is so important for our parish leaders to hear is hiring the right people, hiring tens. So often we get burned out in parish ministry. It's hard. There's a lot going on. It's very fast paced, and we're tempted to sometimes just find anybody who's willing to do it. But when you talked about, having that interview process in place, and I know that that's a corporate thing, but when you transfer that into a parish, which we did in our parish, it made a huge difference in the quality of candidates that we began hiring because we put them through an interview process. And it's so important for our parish leaders to remember that you have to have the best people on your team if you want to continue moving forward.
Right. And making those good hires, I think, only makes their job easier down the line, and sometimes it's easy to find someone just to kind of step in and listen, in all honesty, sometimes we need to do that, right? It's just, I think, part of business, but we should always kind of continue looking and, always hiring. And we're always, if we find, a diamond in the rough, like we're going to find a spot for you, because we see tremendous potential in you. So we try to always do that. But at the same time, keeping a good pulse on who we do have on the team, and are they able to keep up with the standards that we've set?
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember early on we asked the question. I don't know if you have any, but when you said a diamond in the rough or somebody, do you hire for a position or do you hire a person? And I think it's a little bit of both. Like if you have a really good person, try to go find the place for them, because in church world, it is a little bit harder finding those candidates. We don't have 30 people a day. Bringing in. We don't have the the church, the Chick-fil-A infrastructure. Unfortunately, as big as the church is, it should be better at helping us find people. It's not.
Yeah.
So,
well, truth be told,
you got the position, that's most important. Sometimes you got the person, and you got to go with that. So anyway,
Chick-fil-A does not help us with any of the hiring. That's all. That's okay. Why I have dedicated leadership in the restaurant on it, because we need, and really, it's probably 1.5 dedicated, people to recruiting. It's about, attracting and recruiting top talent. That's what we're after. But yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think we're usually hiring for a position, like, if we're short, we're looking to add to the drive-through team, we're looking to add to the front of house team. Sometimes you have someone come in who just has a great demeanor, great personality, friendly, or maybe not so friendly. And it's like, okay, well, you might not do great interacting with the guest, but man, we really love you. Would you consider the kitchen? So that is something that we do too, kind of just reading their body language and trying to really think where they would fit best in our organization. But, if they're a person of character and competence, and, I think we generally try to find somewhere for them to work.
So good. Well, Tom, before I ask a final question, do you have anything else you want to ask?
No, other than just like, I'm so glad we could bring Natalie on. Natalie actually, I do have one question. So let me, I had that back in my mind. So Natalie, anything you would say to parish leaders about how to engage business leaders like yourself? What is it that, any advice you would give to them on that?
I think part of my answer is probably just really simple, and it's ask. I think like a personal ask. I think sometimes like we do a good ask, at mass or, but I think sometimes those relationships and just asking somebody, personally, I think goes a little bit further to maybe attract someone to want to do it. It's a little bit harder to say no when somebody's right there.
Yeah.
But, I think sometimes we feel, I don't know, but a little bit more willingness to say yes when it's a personal connection versus over just a general ask in the middle of mass.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think some of the things Natalie's done, we've asked Natalie to present to some of our other parish leaders about hospitality and how Chick-fil-A does it. And so she's done that to some of our weekend people. And Natalie serves on our parish council. And Natalie's also brought us ideas. So I think it's the personal ask. If you see somebody of Natalie's caliber, right? And if anyone, I mean, probably if you've been listening, Natalie's just an awesome leader. And you have those people in your parish. Just ask them. And then, some things that Natalie, it's kind of unfolded as we've invited you in. There's some other ways you've served the parish that you brought those ideas to us, and we've been having this conversation. So.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm not just going to step up and volunteer. Maybe that's just me, but, when I'm asked, a lot of times I'm honored. Like, I would love to be a part of that, Right. So it is special, it feels really nice to be asked. So, and I think we, yes, sure, we have lots going on. We all do, but you make room for the things that I think are really important and a priority in our lives.
And that's it's a great paradox that some of the best leaders we need, they want to do it, but they will not until the personal ask. And like you're saying, not the general, but the personal ask. And then if you see somebody of quality, yes, ask them personally. Don't be afraid of that personal ask. That's good. Thanks.
Truly. That's key. That's something that our parish leaders need to hear, that personal ask, because we talk about this all of the time, but hearing it from you, someone who they might look at you and say like, oh, Natalie is too busy. She doesn't have time for this. But by that personal ask, you will most likely say yes to it. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Now, Natalie, as we wrap up, if there's anything that you could say to encourage our pastors, our parish staff, or even other business leaders, what would you say?
I think I'll just go back for 1 second because we had touched on culture, but I don't think we really had a chance to dive into it. And one question that I get a lot of times is, how do you build culture in the restaurant? Chick-fil-A culture is always so good and everybody's so friendly. How do you do that? And I think this is a good maybe parting words for ministry leaders. It's culture is everyone's job. A lot of times we put it on, they're the culture leader in the restaurant. They're in charge of like organizing events and, and really intentionally thinking about culture. But really like, culture is in like what we model and what we celebrate and what we tolerate, right? So that touches everybody in our organization. So it's everyone's job to really think about culture and really be to build it and pour into it. And I think the same thing goes in ministry. We can't leave it to one person to kind of lead charge, the way. It's really everyone's job.
Oh my gosh, mic drop right there. That was so good. Thank you. Tom, I mean, we know our parish leaders need to hear that. Culture is everyone's job.
Yeah, great stuff, Natalie. Thank you.
So good. Natalie, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for pouring into this leadership community today. We're so grateful for you.
Thank you. I hope you got some good nuggets from it and, love to do it again in the future.
So good. I love how she brought it home with the nuggets again, Tom. That was perfect. I love it. Well, to all of our pastors and parish leaders out there, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.